Is that good?
Gets better every week. Every week.
Hey, Ron.
I think that's like some of the most exciting thing about this is the real progression of the intro music.
That's the most exciting thing. Maybe
Isn't it?
that's
It's all
maybe that's why we
downhill
have
from there.
maybe that's why we have so many listeners.
Mm-mm.
Well, we had one listener,
Yeah.
and that listener is not happy. I think they took a serious attack on you and me. They didn't take it out on Dana, but you and me, Ron.
I
This
was
week
in the attack too.
I was tagged in some posts, and I think called repeatedly idiot and moron, and I don't know what on like a tirade. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's you know, I it's funny because once again
Make your
you
own cookies.
you've got this friend and try to have a conversation, even expose him to a somewhat reasonable conversation. And here we go. More games, craziness. I don't know.
He's got a lot of
Yeah,
feelings. I think we were
I,
talking about him,
I like tirade. I like tirade.
behind his back. I was waiting to say some positive things in the show to try to balance it a little bit, but I kind of got lost and forgot about it. But anyhow, this person that the last show towards the end was dedicated to did not take kindly to us talking about them, and I guess it's over for us.
Well, that's uh that's pretty typical. I think
How about we do
you know
bets?
what's that?
What? How long till we're friends again?
Mm,
Well, you've never been friends and not friends, right?
no, I have. I've been gosh, I remember I go back way back. I've been
No.
fired.
On Facebook,
Oh,
friended and then not friended and friended. We got to be
no,
careful
well,
actually because I'm talking about this right now. It's possible he'll listen to it and he'll never be my friend again.
well, no,
Too
that's
late.
true. No, yeah, that might be too late, but no, that's only happened like once.
Well, I gotta say, I don't think anybody would likely enjoy being the subject of a show without their consent. So maybe we can work on that.
Isn't that the case of all shows though? Like, aren't they constantly talking about political figures and things like that? I guess since he's not a political figure, maybe that's what it is. He's not putting himself. Well, actually, he is actually putting himself in the spotlight quite often. I don't know what I think. Anyhow, I
Well,
think
yeah, I
it's all
mean,
fine and dandy.
I
I would
think,
love to invite him onto the show to try to maybe put us to straighten us out.
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
Well, there you go. There's an
Well,
invitation, open
I,
invitation to person one to come on the show.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if you've ever noticed, Dana, the very public figure that this individual is on Facebook, and has no problem tagging people and
Calling
saying
them idiots and
things
morons.
and saying all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm not so sure he's worried about one show where he wasn't participating. And oh, by the way, and being very generous and being very vague. So I'm not so certain he's worried about not so certain he's worried about that.
Anyhow, what's up? What's up? What's up, DJ Ron? What's on the plate for tonight's meal?
I don't know. I was hoping you showed up to the barbecue this week with something in the basket.
Mm. You did send me some things, and I have to admit I didn't get through all of them, but the ones I did get through were always thought provoking. I mean, were thought provoking as always. And one in particular that was interesting was that guy who was trying to walk around a rally of something regarding Kavanaugh, and they actually had a person in a vest following them around and telling people not to talk to them.
Yeah.
That was interesting because it caused me to think a lot. It was something about it I really didn't like. I mean, people have the freedom to not talk to you, but the idea that you would have one of your volunteers
Mm-hmm.
follow around someone who's asking questions and prevent people from having conversations with them, it's just so weird. That's almost like triple extreme of what you might expect from some religious cult.
Yeah. So what do you think about that?
That's what I'm saying. It's almost the closest thing I've seen to that are these cults you hear about where you're causing dissension, right? So you can't talk to people, and then you get asked to leave because you're talking to
Right?
people. That's like the closest thing I've ever seen to that. But in this case, it's almost worse. It's weird.
It makes him seem very dangerous. And the person you're talking about is Charlie Kirk. That's the man's name who was being told, or who was being kind of shunned at
And
that
then
Yeah.
Kavanaugh
one of the
rally.
great shots was when she repeatedly threatened to call the police and that this was their space, and he repeatedly was saying, "I have, freedom of speech." And then the police showed up, and they're like, "Yeah, he can be here."
Yeah. Your freedom of speech doesn't trump his, I think.
Yeah, is what the police said.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for the founders of this country creating um, a right to speak freely. It's really under attack at this moment by certain groups of people.
Yeah. Do you feel like it is? Do you feel like that's not just a conspiracy theory? That's not just something over exaggerated? Do you feel like that's a real true concern?
Well, I don't know that you have to theorize about it. That video was when you scrape away all the details and just like step back. It was a video in which somebody from with an opposing view was continuously prevented by any means that were legally possible from being able to participate. It was I guess the reason I bring up the founding fathers is it terrifies me to think what would happen if these people were in power. If these people were in
Right.
power and they got rid of the laws. I mean, she the person in the video who was calling the police because he was asking people questions. And to think that this person is wants to this is a political rally, so this person wants their ideologies to reign, and so the idea that you'd have uh, a society where it's not legal to talk to people with opposing views
Do you
is
happen to remember
scary.
do you happen to remember the content?
Well, the whole video it was a Kavanaugh rally, and the whole video was him basically being asked to prevented from and followed around by a guy with a vest on from talking to people.
Yeah, yeah.
So the video,
Yeah.
you couldn't get to the content because every time you started to talk to somebody, this other person would be telling them not to answer questions and shooing them away, and then people would listen too. That's the other thing I thought was crazy. Imagine that. Imagine that, Ron. Imagine you're at a rally and somebody with an opposing view comes up to you and said, "I'd like to ask you some questions, Ron." And then a person in a vest walks up and says, "Don't talk to that person."
Yeah.
Would you be startled?
I'd be startled. Yeah,
I would be
absolutely.
startled. And then it would almost make me think, like, why can't I talk to this person? So then if I started to talk with them, like, no, you shouldn't answer questions. I'd be like, what? Who is this person in this yellow vest? Like, what is going on here? Am I in some sort of like mind melding? I don't know. Is that the right word? Mind meld? Am I in some sort of weird alternate universe right now? And then the people would
Yeah.
walk away. The people that
Well,
he was talking to would listen to the person in the orange vest and walk away. And I'm thinking, oh my, what is going on here?
yeah. Who do you trust, Jeff, to that level? Do you trust anyone to that level that they can
I
just
don't
tell
think
you
so. That's what I'm
what to
saying. It's
think
almost,
about someone and you're like, okay.
and I'm saying it's almost cult-like. It's weird. It's like it's almost cult-like, where you'd have a religious leader, and I know that there's been all kinds of religious movements and things. And we were just passing the anniversary of the guy who gave the cyanide Kool-Aid to everyone, right?
Oh, I didn't know that,
Jim
but yeah,
Jones,
yeah.
and I believe that was a could be wrong here, but it was partially a political movement, right?
I don't know. I think the government got involved in it, but kind of like I don't know other small situations they've been involved in. I don't know if it was a political movement, but I could be wrong. What do you mean by that? Maybe you're right. I don't know.
I'll have to look into it. I'll disappear for a minute. Come back to you. I'm outie.
No, I'm with you, Jeff.
No, you have to talk about something now. Tap tap your cord.
So Dana, did you happen to watch any of that content?
Oh, no, well, I've seen that video before and just I already came across that video, but no, I'm so sorry. I was a
Oh,
little bit lighter on my social media time.
oh no, that is okay.
Yeah, I'm reading this book called Glow Kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how technology influences our children's brains and also our brains, but it's primarily aimed at parents um, being more cautious about putting iPads and cell phones in front of their children. Very interesting. So I don't know if that has influenced me to be a little bit lighter on my cell phone usage, but yeah, I didn't keep up with the videos. The book is actually kind of terrifying though, as far as how screen time is it's very much like a drug for us and more so for children because their brains are a little more malleable than ours. They're developing.
Right, right.
So it's pretty
So
sobering.
yeah, no, that's good. That's good stuff. So you're reading a book, and the book essentially, I guess, promotes less screen time, right? Like, so you're not spending a lot of time on the phone, and I'm sure that goes with the computer, TV, and it translates into that as well, as well.
Well, I we recently purchased our smartphones, I think within the last 2 years. And oh, it's been a struggle for me because I spend a lot more time on the phone than I would prefer. I noticed several months ago I clearly thought, wow, like I read to my older children a lot more than I do to my younger ones. And it would often happen when I was feeding the baby because I was kind of stuck on the couch or whatever. I was stuck in one place. So I would get my other two children who were fairly young as well. And I would read to them to keep them entertained and just because I thought reading was good, for them. But
Yeah.
now it's so easy just to take my phone and read to myself, like look up stuff on the internet and enjoy social media and maybe read some valuable things, but it's not the best use of my time. And I've gone, I've really, it's been a really hard thing for me. A few months back, I was declaring that I just wanted to go back to a flip phone or get a flip phone instead of the smartphone because I have a hard time staying off of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good stuff. I mean, well, obviously you do, right? Because it wasn't that long ago, but do you remember before smartphones, right?
Yes.
Maybe
So,
before that.
before smartphones, I still kind of spent more time online than I needed to. It would be a distraction for me. Sometimes I'd stay up too late because that would be a quiet time. Or again, you know me, I'm always, for the last nearly 15 years, I've often had a baby who nurses. So I'd sit and just nurse the baby to sleep and read things online. Um, but with the cell phone, though, it really is taken on a whole new level because now it's just so accessible. Before, I'd have to be at the computer, and we never had a TV, but I just read a lot
Yeah.
on the computer for the most part. So,
Yeah.
but now with the phone, I could take it anywhere. I could go outside, wherever the Wi-Fi is. So I don't like how I've used it more than I think I should.
No, no, no. That's I think anybody, or well, not anybody, but most people I have come across seem to want to limit what they do over the phone or on the phone. Um, Probably not a bad idea. I think at the end of the day, right? I mean, whatever interest you have, whether it be the news or whatever, it seems to be kind of secondary to to other things for most people. Most people don't seem to think all that stuff's all that important at the end of the day, right? I mean, most people, I think, seem to feel limiting your time over on the phone is probably a good thing, right?
Well, yeah, and then I just see what it has been taken away. Where again, just like I thought, oh, I used to read to my children more, and if I didn't use this phone so much, I probably would read just as much to my younger ones today. So that's not good for them. And then just even me being just not as present, like not talking with them as much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's so and I am better at limiting the children's access to the phone or the screen time than I am with myself. So I guess as far as this book goes, I mean, I might not change that much about what I do with the children, but I mean, I was even thinking just this past week, what if I deleted my Facebook account? We've talked about Facebook a lot on this show. And I thought, gosh, well, I really like all my pictures because it's kind of been like a journal for me. I could go through and see, you know, different photos that I've never printed out. They've only been uploaded to Facebook. And that's like the most accessible way I have of seeing them. Some of them were uploaded from computers that like we have in our closet, like that we haven't taken all the information off the computers yet. So Facebook is the only place that I could see those photos. So I thought, well, what if I just copied everything and put it in a document like on my Google Docs? And so I'd have that record of my life, which I kind of like. I've seen, it's a really neat record. But what if I really just walked away? And how, I guess I was determining that I think my life would be better off.
Yeah,
maybe, it sounds so dramatic. Like we're so addicted to this, or maybe not addicted. We're so immersed in this Facebook world that seems really dramatic to do. Where like I think, oh, is that a good idea?
Yeah. I don't see. Well, I mean, I don't know necessarily if you use that app or a bunch of different apps. So you don't seem too active on Facebook. I could be wrong, unless you're somewhere active somewhere else, but I don't see you. I thought at the end of the day, you're probably less active than probably a lot of people.
Well, I
just
do.
Just off observation, but I could be wrong.
I'm part of different groups, though. Like I'm part of a few Pomona groups and different things. So I'll comment, so maybe that's where a lot of or a big portion of my commenting is, like groups that I'm part of. And I try, while I'm open to debating somewhat, for the most part, I try to have productive conversations. But I do scroll a lot. There are a lot of former high school classmates of mine who I have zero contact with in real life, but yet I'm still like, they're still, I don't mean that it's not like I don't want to, it's not like I wouldn't want to know them, but I have no contact with them, but yet I'm still looking at their pictures and they're taking up headspace of mine when I don't even see these people. That doesn't seem like a good use of my limited brain, just to like why am I learning all this information about these people? Again, they're not people. It's not like I don't dislike them. It's just it doesn't make any sense to me. I think, why am I spending time looking at their, because the posts come up in my feed and I scroll through and I notice them and I think about them. And I read comments and it's like, that's really not a good use of my time, but it's so interesting because I am social. Like I like hearing about people's lives, but it probably would make more sense to maybe do that with people who I see. Like, are you using the app more or I don't even have the app, but I just go on the website on my phone, but are you using Facebook and kind of, just observing other people's lives as part of your Facebook time?
No, not really. I mean, I don't know anybody that once in a great while somebody shares something personal, but for the most part, I don't see anybody sharing like super personal stuff. Like they'll, show pictures of the kids every once in a while, but for the most part, it's just memes and articles, cooking stuff, and news stuff, political stuff. I don't see anybody necessarily doing, personal life stuff.
Maybe because so I'll see like if someone posts their kids or like they're pregnant or their child's school picture or what they did and what some award they got. So I've seen people's children age, I would probably know the age they are right now. These are children I never see in real life, and it's like a lot of times it's not even, I don't seek out friends a lot. I mean, people will friend me, or request. And often I assume, oh, they must want to talk with me or something. Like I kind of vaguely remember this person. So I'll accept the friend request and then I'll realize, oh, I'm just they're not trying to do it. They're just connecting with people who they used to go to school with. So I tend to seek out friend requests for someone who I actually want to like message or, you know, um, engage with personally. So again, I even just with those things that you mentioned, like the pictures of the children, I notice those and I pay attention. I know the kids' names. It's just really weird. Maybe I should just kind of filter my feed a little bit more. But I mean, you've probably heard people saying that they should cut back or that it's not a good part of their life or it wastes too much time. Or when they do engage with, like, say, some of those news posts that you share, where these issues are very interesting, it seems like the dialogue on Facebook often turns very petty and mean spirited, and it's not very thoughtful. It's not with a lot of good, it's not done with a lot of goodwill. So the dialogues get kind of just ugly, um, not really done with a good tone.
Yeah, no, they never. Well, I don't want to say never. Um, yeah, there's, over and over again, you can you can clearly see that political stuff, religious stuff doesn't do too well on most forums for whatever reason. Just gets nasty.
Nasty. Yes. And so I have a friend who gave me the book, and she, she's never had a social media account. She purposely doesn't want to, but she's very much engaged with, I mean, particularly politics. She's always reading up on issues. She's very informed. She does things in the community, like shows up to council meetings or different, um, speaks up for different causes. So she's definitely interested in politics and being involved as a citizen. But I mean, so I guess it's just an example of, wow, you don't have to do it through Facebook to know about things. But Facebook has been such an easy way for me to kind of see what's going on in the culture and engage with different ideas, but they can be accessed different ways. I don't know if I'm going on too much about it, but it's kind of like I do have a love, not love hate relationship, but I guess a real problem with my own self control when it comes to Facebook, because again, it's so interesting. It's like a big chocolate covered cheesecake that I can grab all anytime I want.
Uh, you think?
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
I have a news flash.
Mm.
You know that Jim Jones guy?
Yeah.
Got a really interesting story.
Great.
Do you know? Do you know much about this guy?
No, not really.
Are you ready?
Please.
It's oddly connected to maybe some of the things we've been talking about. All right. Here we go. Just chime on in as I read here. He let's see. In the early life, he did some stuff. Is that pretty clear?
It's amazing.
That's amazing. Okay, and later on, he did some other things. Okay, including attending gatherings of the Communist Party USA in Indianapolis. Start there in 1951. Maybe getting some ideas. Let's see here. He was flustered with the harassment during the McCarthy hearings. So let's see. That's not that interesting. But then he gets into racial integration. So he's actually, remember I was talking about politics, Ron? Remember I was talking about politics?
Yeah.
1960, Indianapolis Mayor Charles Boswell appointed Jones director of the Human Rights Commission. Jones ignored Boswell's advice to keep a low profile, finding new outlets for his views on local radio and television program. When the mayor and the commissioner asked Jones to curtail his public actions, he resisted and was wildly cheered at a meeting of the NAACP and Urban League when he yelled for his audience to be more militant and then climaxed with, "Let my people go." And he actually did a lot of things to get integration going, including being in a hospital in the black part of the hospital instead of the white part by accident initially, but then he stayed there and eventually integrated that place. And so he early on was part of the push for integration all over the place and was involved with that. But yeah, it talks here about his family and going to Brazil and then moving to California. It gets interesting though, Ron.
What is most interesting to you?
Well, according to the religious studies professor Catherine Wessinger, while Jones always spoke of the social gospel's virtues, he chose to conceal that his gospel was actually communism until late 60s. By that time, Jones began at least partially revealing the details of his, quote, apostolic socialism, end quote, concept in temple sermons. He also taught that, quote, those who remained drugged with the opiate of religion had to be brought to enlightenment. Socialism, end quote. Jones often mixed these ideas, such as preaching that, quote, if you're born in capitalist America, racist America, fascist America, then you're born in sin. But if you're born in socialism, you're not born in sin.
Wow.
End quote. Wow, indeed, huh?
Yeah.
Strangely familiar, eh?
So, yeah.
Want some more?
Yeah, please.
All right. By the early 1970s, Jones began deriding traditional Christianity as, quote, flyaway religion, end quote, rejecting the Bible as being a tool to oppress women and non-whites and denouncing a, quote, sky god, end quote, who was not at all. Jones wrote a booklet titled, quote, The Letter Killeth, end quote, criticizing the King James Bible, and began preaching that he was the reincarnation of Gandhi, Father Divine, Jesus, Gautama Buddha, and Vladimir Lenin. Very interesting. So I always thought of him as sort of this religious leader. I didn't know he was like a socialist, communist, anti-capitalist cult leader. Did you know that?
I did not.
Isn't that interesting? Is this a media blackout, Ron?
I don't know. What do you think? So
I don't know, because it gets really interesting. I'm going to read more too, because it gets even more interesting.
Well, are you feeling like there is a corollary today to our times when it seems like people who advocate for this particular style of government, and if you disagree, you're a blasphemer, you're wicked.
Yes, that's what I was just talking about. It's almost religious. And here you have a man who basically made a religion around socialism and communism. Very interesting.
Well, I mean, back, I don't know, early email days, right? I think we used to talk about that. We used to call it a religious kind of thing, right? There used to be terms that we would use, or I would use anyway, to refer to it as a religion, right?
Wait, to refer to socialism?
Not just socialism, just socialism, whatever. People can use whatever. People can use the Republican Party as their religion, right? Politics can be religion, don't you think? And it sounds like from what Jeff is reading that politics was the religion.
Can I continue?
Yeah.
Since you just said that, I'd like to continue. It's just so interesting. Just like you were saying, the politics. Here we go. Within 5 years of moving to California, the temple experienced a period of exponential growth and opened branches in cities including San Fernando, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. By the early 1970s, Jones began shifting his focus to major cities because of the limited expansion opportunities in Ukiah. I don't know. That's a place, I guess. He eventually moved the temple's headquarters to San Francisco, which was a major center for radical protest movement at the time. The move led Jones and the temple to become politically influential in San Francisco politics, culminating in the temple's instrument role in the mayoral election victory of George Moscone in 1975. Moscone subsequently appointed Jones as the chairman of the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission. Now, it goes on here to talk about all the different political relationships that he had, including, for example, Jones and Moscone met privately with presidential candidate Walter Mondale, and then First Lady Rosalind Carter also personally met with Jones on multiple occasions, corresponding with him about Cuba. Spoke with him at the grand opening of the San Francisco headquarters, where he received louder applause than Miss Carter. California Assemblyman Willie Brown. You ever heard of Willie Brown? Anyway,
Yes.
served as a master of ceremonies at a large testimonial dinner for Jones, attended by Governor Jerry Brown and Lieutenant Governor Mervyn Dimally. This guy is not just some random guy. This Jones guy was
pretty big deal.
Connected with all these different people who are still in power today. You'd almost think this got swept under the rug.
Yeah.
Well, it is. We are a little young, right? Maybe there was more talk about it at the time, and maybe more disavowing. Maybe some of these leaders really disavowed him, their associations with him. We don't know, right? We weren't even born yet, right?
I guess. Yeah.
Well,
I guess.
Come on.
Fair enough, Dana. Fair enough. It was a long time ago, but let me continue, if I may. In San Francisco, in his San Francisco apartment, Jones hosted local political figures and so on and so on. But watch this right here. Let me jump down to this one. Jones, I never even realized it's called Jonestown. Do you get it? I didn't even realize.
Yes.
I never even noticed. It's not obvious. I kind of feel dumb now. But Jones had first started building Jonestown, formerly known as, quote, People's Temple Agricultural Project, end quote, several years before the New West article. Now, I don't know what that article is, but several years before the New West article was published. It's probably about this. Jonestown was promoted as a means to create both a socialist paradise, quote, socialist paradise, end quote, and a sanctuary from the media scrutiny in San Francisco. Jones purported to establish Jonestown as a benevolent model communist community, stating, I believe we're the purest communist there are, end quote. In that regard, like the restrictive immigrant policies of the Soviet Union, Cuba, North Korea, and other communist states, Jones did not permit members to leave Jonestown. Anyways, so
they had
this
the wall.
guy,
It's just they had the wall, but you couldn't. It was for people not to get out. How sad. Wow.
So there you go. Mr. Jones was a crazy communist socialist guy who was speaking in the same way that the Antifa people kind of speak right now. It's almost scary.
Yeah, so is communism, just by the nature of the beast, is it always, I guess, that always controlling, right? It has to control. It can't be a free will group. Nobody leaves.
Well, that's a big leaping conclusion, but it is very interesting. I mean, no matter what, the idea, of course, is that there has to be a central control, right?
A communist symbol. And they'll say, idea is so good they have to be forced upon you.
So that's interesting. So I didn't know he was Antifa, you know? anti-fascist
So
as he kills people. Like
Well,
so
it's
so
like the
why did
same
he kill the
thing.
people? Was it because the government was going to come crack down on them
That is
or
what happened, Dana.
disband?
It's like you know the story. So
I
so
just
what
know that.
happened
I
is,
think that part I've heard more about.
yeah, it says that visit. This is the title of the section: Visit by Congressman Ryan and Mass Suicide. So in November 1978, just a little while after somebody was born, I won't say who, Leo Ryan, that's Congressman Ryan, I guess, led a fact-finding mission to Jonestown to investigate allegations of human rights abuses. His delegation included relatives of Temple members, an NBC camera crew, and reporters for various newspapers. And they arrive, and at some point, one of the Temple members tries to stab Ryan.
Oh gosh.
And then it says the attack was thwarted, bringing the visit to an abrupt end. Ryan and his delegation managed to take along 15 Temple members who had expressed a wish to leave. At that time, Jones made no attempt to prevent their departure. But then here's the crazy part. As members of the delegation boarded two planes at the airstrip, Jones' armed guards, called the, quote, Red Brigade, end quote, arrived on a tractor and trailer and began shooting at them. The gunman killed Ryan, the congressman, and four others near Guyana Airways Twin Otter aircraft. And so at the same time, one of the supposed defectors, Larry Lighton, drew a weapon and began firing on members of the party that had already boarded a small Cessna. Isn't that sad? One of the members who was escaping, I guess it sounds like, turned. Anyways, so that, of course, led to, it says, later that same day, 909 inhabitants of Jonestown, 304 of them children, died of apparent cyanide poisoning. So it appears that, I don't know what happened exactly, but it was all just going to crumble. So he had everyone commit suicide.
yeah,
I
so
don't know.
that's an interesting story. As you pointed out, right? I mean, there seems to be some parallels.
50 years ago.
What?
November 50 years ago is when this happened.
What do you think about the parallels of today?
It's startling. I agree with Dana that it has been a while since this happened, but to hear that this, I always just assumed it was some religious cult leader or something like that. I did not know he was this socialist communist guy. Now, certainly he was a cult leader in that I know he included healings and he said he was God and so forth. But from the things I've read and heard, socialism was God, and as an advocate of socialism, he was God, and he had these different ideas. But in the end, it wasn't just simply religion, but it was this idea of capitalism is bad, socialism is good, and we're going to make the utopian socialist, by the very words of his mouth quoted over here, this perfect socialist communist little place
Where you
crazy.
can't leave.
So yeah, that was a while ago, no doubt. But obviously, you've been able to point out some very clear similarities to what we see today, right?
Yes, the Antifa people terrify me. It cannot be overlooked. It doesn't seem dissimilar. They have similar words, right? But then they're violent, and you get this weird twist. I don't know what it is, with this weird twist where they on the one hand they want to say that they're for all these so-called good things, but then they do all these bad things.
One of the videos I sent you, if you ever get a chance to watch it, I think I'm pretty sure it was Charlie Kirk, again, but he, in one interview, he essentially is talking to some girl, and she says that if you misgender somebody, you should be arrested. And she said it over and over again. He confirmed it and said, "So what you're saying?" And she said, "Yes." And then he pointed out instances where that was actually a real possibility, and places that have laws that promote or encourage that. And she agreed. She said, yeah, no, absolutely. So that even, I think, outside of the Antifa movement, right? I mean, you still have a it seems like, at least from these videos that I'm sending you, a pretty large percentage of the population that believes that.
I don't know what large percentage means, but I certainly know there is a significant number of people who believe these things, and it is scary. Um, I might get arrested for what I'm going to say now, but I was just talking with some people about this whole misgendering thing and how it's almost like within the last few years there's been a change from when in the past if a man wore women's clothing, then a man wore women's clothing. That was it. If a man wore women's clothing, a man was wearing women's clothing. That was kind of the extent of it. Um, Regardless of your thoughts about it, that was the extent of it. It's almost like dress up. And so I was thinking of it like Halloween, where people put on costumes. And so people are putting on costumes. But it's now, today, it's changed to where when they're wearing the costume, you're supposed to actually accept that whatever they're dressing themselves up as, that's what they are. And it would be like Halloween, that every child that comes to your door dressed up in whatever outfit, you're supposed to actually speak and act under threat of going to jail as though whatever it is that they're wearing, uh, that's what they are. And so if the Tin Woodman walks up to the door, you would have to say, you are the shiniest Tin Woodman I've ever seen. And if you were to even mention that that was a child in an outfit, that would actually be illegal. And the next child walks up and they're, I don't know, Tickle Me Elmo. And you'd have to say, oh, you're the furriest little Tickle Me Elmo, right? But you wouldn't be able to say they're wearing a costume. And that seems like kind of like what's happened. It's not just clothing, but there's actually this push to make you say that whatever any person is dressed up as is what require you to participate in the game.
Right. So you were having a conversation about this tonight.
No, a few days ago with somebody.
How did that go?
That was preaching to the choir.
So they saw the same things. Dana, do you see that as a I guess something that's pretty clear in the news and things you hear, cultural kind of stuff? I mean, do you agree that that's probably a real possibility if you misgender somebody, that there's certain places and laws that people actually, there's consequences to that?
Yeah, I just read a story of a teacher in the U.S. who he was a public school teacher, high school teacher, and he had a student who, um, I guess, transitioned, and he complied insofar as he would call the the girl who was identifying as a boy, he would call her by the new name, and he tried not to use pronouns. As far as I could tell, he just tried to always use the new name. But supposedly even that wasn't good enough. I mean, maybe the story didn't cover everything that was happening with this principal and his administration, but he was fired because he didn't go as far as to actually use the pronouns. So that's unfolding right now with the student body who really love this teacher. I guess they're protesting his firing, but yeah, because he didn't use the pronouns, and also the teacher, I guess he had commented on the whole thing by I think a remark that he made to one of his students was that he missed whoever this person was. He missed so and so when they were a girl or something like that. Or he missed the old so and so, basically. He was saying that. So yeah, that amount of non-compliance resulted in him losing his job.
Right. So I guess, although 50 years ago or whatever it was, not too far from, actually, it seems like a worse problem. I mean, that was kind of an isolated issue, right? The Jim Jones thing. But now it seems like laws have kind of actually turned so that we're seeing the kind of stuff that you mentioned.
Yeah. So we heard a phrase.
Well, let me ask you. You seem hesitant on what I just said, as though what I said was it not clear? What are your thoughts?
Well, no, I was actually trying to recall this phrase we heard, which is, I think it's history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And it seems like we are experiencing a shift to a type of suppression, right, of freedoms, like freedom, or kind of like the freedom to dissent, I guess. New cultural norms, and yeah, it is interesting. I don't know if I mentioned it on this wonderful show before, but I've had, or I've heard of, two people whose relatives or whose family, they are um, members of immigrant families who came here from, I think one was from like Russia and the Czech Republic, and the family was really seeking refuge here, like asylum. They were getting. I know one of my friends' family, her family members were killed and put in camps and re-education and the whole gamut. And they came here purposely for the freedom that America offered, like freedom for religion and just thought in general. And I guess their surviving family members have both commented that basically they're very, very sad and concerned to see the direction that America is going when they came here for the freedom. And one man actually said that, I guess he's old, and I guess he said he was actually really glad he'd be dead in 20 years because it would break his heart so much to see the country that he fled to become like the country he came from.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've heard that a couple times. Um, I've heard people state that very same thing from different places, and they've migrated here, and now they're seeing the same things that they came from, that they escaped from, that they didn't like, taking place here, and yet seems like there's a lot of support for that for whatever reason. So,
or a lot of like silent, like bullied silence, right? Some people don't want to be viewed as being bigots. I mean, we just talked about this on the show, right? Last time. It's no fun to be called a Nazi or a bigot, especially when don't believe that you are one, but not having the same like lockstep ideology as some of these advocates do, that can result in you getting harassed.
yeah. Why do you suppose? I mean, for the most part, not only do we see support for it in a lot of ways, right? I mean, I see a lot of the videos I send you, take place. There's interviews, many interviews in like college campuses or different places all over the United States. And again, that's where I think I come up with the numbers, Jeff, if you happen to be interested in that. But many universities that these conservative speakers go to, they face a lot of protests. They face a lot of opposition to their speeches, right? They get shut down all the time. That's a well-known thing. I've seen it happen many times. I know I've sent you videos on it. And so you do have quite a bit of support. Not only that, but I'll say you do have a lot of support, at least it seems, in universities and people coming up into the world. And then take that with many experiences that I've had personally on Facebook and social media and different forums, and stuff that I've seen you personally go through as well. And so, with that said, it seems to me, if I'm not mistaken, it seems to me that there is a large percentage of people that actually support that stuff. I actually agree with that. I don't see too many people, number one, concerned about it. But I also don't see too many people, fighting against it or saying, hey, that's kind of wrong. There seems to be a general acceptance of it, as that's just the way things are.
Acceptance
right.
of.
So you're asking, why do you think people?
Well, yeah. I mean, why do you think? What in your opinion? Why do you think there's not more concern about it? I guess. So, like for instance, I would say just observation. You don't personally seem too concerned about it. I think you acknowledge that it's real, but I don't think at the end of the day, it doesn't sound like anyway. It's something you're real concerned about.
No, I actually am quite concerned about it. And I mean, I've had a lot of conversations in person with people, and I've said that I think, as far as like for the Christian churches in general, I think the LGBT agenda is what is going to be a key method, or like if like Christian churches and Christians are going to suffer financially, legally, whatever, again, losing their jobs or just like harassment, or I guess, or just people not liking them, right? It's going to be due to those issues. It's going to be due to them taking some type of stance that's not in lockstep agreement with the LGBT goals. And I think we've talked about this one already, right? The senator in Berkeley who, right? You followed that story. The Berkeley Christian Senate, they have that student Senate body, and she is one of the senators, and they were voting on a kind of like a referendum or something that was going to oppose the Trump administration's plan to combine gender with biology. And they were making a statement that says, we absolutely reject that, just making some type of statement, I guess. She chose not to even vote on it. She wasn't going to vote against them. She just wasn't going to vote. She chose not to vote, but she dared to make a statement, basically trying to say as lovingly as possible, saying all these loving things, but still taking a stand saying, I cannot agree, though, with behavior that I don't think is helpful to people because of her Christian ethics. And she just got, I don't even know if she's a senator anymore, but she was very much verbally maligned, written about in the paper, people screaming for her resignation. So her stance against that issue was what brought on so much opposition. And like no other issues, right? Like she probably believes that a lot of people are going to hell, but people aren't going to scream at her for that or demand her resignation for that. But they will demand her resignation if she dares to say that gender is related to biology, or that she doesn't think like homosexual relationships are the best thing for people.
Right.
That is what gets all the angry opposition. So yeah, I think that is a big deal that's coming. That it seems like that's the trajectory of the culture, and that's why you see people getting sued, the Christian baker getting brought all the way to the Supreme Court. That is a big deal.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I would think that there would be more concern about that. I would think that I have a hard time understanding why you have so many people in support of it. And I scratch my head with that and go, that's weird. People that say they're for freedom, people that kind of promote diversity, people that promote, or at least say that they believe, in freedom of speech. They seem to be, at least from observation, supporting these laws and supporting these positions that, at the end of the day, have consequences for people that don't really believe those things, or at least are willing to even have a conversation. I mean, I've seen it. It's not even somebody coming out and saying, I don't believe what you say and I'm rejecting what you say. If you even want to have a conversation about it and question it, that's problematic. You can't even have the conversation, it seems like. And again, forget about the videos that are out there in abundance that show that kind of stuff. But what about just the kind of personal experiences that you have now, and the interactions that you have now with a few individuals?
Yeah,
that shut down conversations and will not talk about the issues. Will not discuss them. And there is no consideration of your point. There is no ability for you to say, hey, wait a second, just want to look at this. I don't want to, jump to any conclusions. I'm not saying you're wrong, but let's consider some of this other stuff. I mean, I don't know. Again, it's not just stuff you see on the news. I feel like we experience that with just the interactions that we have personally.
Yeah. So Jeff and I have. So I mean, maybe that's. So maybe it's interesting. Maybe I don't share as much on Facebook or whatever about how concerned I am. Although I have actually posted about some of those free speech things, because I've seen those as being very key, right? Just the ability to speak to a crowd who wants to listen to you. That should be protected. But Jeff and I have talked, and as we realize that some of our peers who we've had those types of interactions with, that these are people who are working in media. These are people who are in the position to be college educators, or who are educating at a college, whether it's more like a what do you call it, like a grad student type position. Um, just realizing like, oh, like these are people who are influencers, right? And
yeah,
we've thought, I mean, I think Jeff has even stated like it kind of scares him to death to think about these type of people having power, having more power, being able to change laws. Like we would likely, if we were the people in power, we would likely be tolerant people where it's like, okay, you can speak, say, for example, Christianity. I cannot see me wanting to shut down someone's talk who was speaking against Christianity if it was in a public place, you know? Um, I can't see doing that, screaming my head off, not letting people into the building to hear
What if they
them.
were saying Dana's
But
ugly?
even if they were saying I'm ugly, but say they were speaking against my God
Dana,
and my
let's be
religion.
honest. Ugly, Dana ugly. You would let people say you're ugly?
Yeah, I could not see feeling justified in again, locking arms, not letting people in the building, using air horns to interrupt the talk. I would not do that. Now, I wouldn't want them to be a guest speaker at my church. That's different. But in a public forum, sure. But I have a lot of doubts as to whether these people are going to be as generous with me about my rights to speak or people like me. Like, I really, that does give me a lot of concern.
So it seems like I forget her name, Alexandria.
Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah. So recently, I think this week, right? Donald Trump Jr. Posted something on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter account, but it's all over the news. He posted something on Twitter about communism and tied her to it, and then she responded back. Have you heard the story?
Maybe. Go for it. You
So
just
yeah, so she responded back essentially saying I'd be careful, um, essentially because I'm going to have subpoena powers in the next few months. That's a
yeah.
paraphrase of what she said. So that's exactly, I think, what you're talking about. Now, there was some big backlash on social media because of it, but you can see clearly that, people come into the power, and she's not the only one. I mean, that's pretty widespread. It's
Yes. Well, don't you think also just Trump's presidency in general, um, where, if people like him or not, you have to admit this was an outsider kind of breaking into government, and it is terrifying seeing how he's been treated and how every they're going through every single thing he's ever done with the fine tooth comb, arresting people. I mean, with the investigation, getting people on all these charges that aren't even part of the original investigation. But it's just like any connection with him, we're going to find something on you and we're going to punish you in a way that anyone associated with Hillary Clinton would not have been investigated and therefore punished.
right.
Like if we want to have this very clean government where every hint of corruption is not there, cool. If that's going to be the new standard, great. But you get a real clear sense that this is not, that this is like a one-sided probe, and this would not be done had the other side won. And just and it's very scary to think, oh yeah, like if you rise to power and a lot of people think you're not supposed to be there, they're going to use any means necessary to get you out, put you in jail.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it seems like no shortage of people, even in arm's length, that support that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Sure. And so on one hand, I guess I think, well, I wouldn't run for office or subject my family to that. But yeah, it has been very scary to think that not everybody has a a view of like being being moral, right? Not using the law for their own vindictive purposes. And
I'm actually gonna jump in here, Dana, and say
jump in, Jeff.
I am surprised. I didn't know about this new story. I mean, I haven't really been keeping up on things too closely in general, but yeah, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez writes, I have noticed that Junior here has a habit of posting nonsense about me whenever the Mueller investigation heats up. Please keep it coming, Junior. It's definitely a, quote, a very, very large brain, end quote, idea to troll a member of a body that will have subpoena power in a month. Have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so you don't want someone like that who has power. And so what was that quote? We talked about it, right? Where it's if they can't be civil when they're not in power, like if you can't trust them to be civil when they don't have power, then I don't know. Don't give them power, basically. Like if you it's scary.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yes. So I mean, going back to kind of some of our interactions that we've had, the debates that we have with people, or at least attempt to have. Um, are you concerned for the people, again, in arm's reach, that do support that kind of stuff? Do you feel like that's problematic at all? And I don't mean like a bad person, but do you feel like they're misguided? Do you feel like they just don't understand? I know Jeff has, um, in the past, he's kind of stated that, some of these people, live in a bubble, but that was referring to media people. But it seems like, again, people that we interact with kind of support those things, and hard to say that they're living in a bubble, that same kind of bubble, and yet they seem to be on board with that stuff. And if not coming out and waving pom poms and flags and banners stating clearly that they support that person, they definitely support that person's position on a lot of things. And you can kind of see the same behaviors, the same behaviors when it comes to conversations. Just people shouting over each other, shutting conversations down. So I guess what I'm saying is that although you see it in the media, obviously, and the example that we just talked about with Alexandra, but I mean that's something that it seems like we experience with everyday people. And would you are you concerned about that? What are your thoughts? What are your I mean, I know you want to be probably careful with what you say, but it seems to me, with these interactions that we're having, um, and even attempting to have a conversation, I have a again, I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around why it's so difficult to get someone to simply chat about this stuff.
No, I think it's they don't know how to be tolerant. So
That's it.
yeah, well, tolerant means you can um kind of like accept somebody while not approving of them. You don't have to approve of them, but you can allow them to coexist and you can respect them. And I think when I've had interactions, and I can think, you know, 10 years back with, different people where they're the ones who get very angry, who will yell at you, who just seething with rage when you express a different stance. Um, they just can't seem to deal with being tolerant. And I feel like I constantly deal with being tolerant. There's a lot of things I don't approve of or I don't think are right. A lot of people's actions, but I don't seek to stamp them out of existence or scream at them. I'd like them to change, but tolerance means you let them be. I mean, and while seeking to change them, but you don't come at them with that destructive rage. You
And you're
don't hate
talking
them.
we're talking all at the verbal level, if I'm understanding correctly.
Well, isn't it kind of hateful
Because
to think I want you to lose your job because you don't do this thing that I want you to do? You don't say these words.
Um,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think tolerance is somewhere in there, somewhere mixed in there.
I think it's a pretty complex thing when you look at all the different possible ways these things go down. But the only thing I was noting is that you're talking about the verbal level, like you don't
Yeah.
believe
Say the
in
speeches. The
tolerating people
speeches.
being physically beaten on the street.
Wait. Well, how about if you just focus
I'm
on,
just,
like, he brought up the speeches, the people going to the colleges and wanting to do their speech, and all these people freaking out and not even letting this, wanting to disrupt the speech and shut it down. Wouldn't you
yeah,
say that's an example
I'm
of
just putting
not
some
being
boundaries on what you
tolerant?
mean. You're talking
Yeah,
about
so say that
it's
one.
all
That
in the
one's
context of
tolerance.
speech. It's all in the context
Yeah.
of speech.
Yes.
That's the first thing I just want to note. The second thing I was
Ideas.
curious about was there's been some pretty heinous stuff in the last few years perpetrated by the um and oh gosh, not Antifa. In Syria it was who? ISIS, right? ISIS, infamous ISIL from Mr. Obama, but ISIS, right? They were cutting people's heads off. Now, if someone were to come to a local college here and advocate for the beheading of Christians, would you believe that should be protected speech? Would that be something that you would say that's okay?
I think our First Amendment standards were pretty good.
So you'd say you're gonna have to let them teach hate.
Well, so is that different than someone saying we should have the death penalty for this type of crime that we don't currently have the death penalty for? Like, you wouldn't say that's hate speech, right? But it's when they say, let's kill Jeff Geibel right now, then that's something that's not protected, right? Isn't that the
You
distinction?
mean the plotting to actually kill there's a
Yeah,
name
where you're
for it.
actually
You're actually
calling to
yeah.
violence right now.
But I'm
Like,
saying that if a person came to a college campus who is teaching that we ought to be cutting the heads off of Christians, and they're trying to convince the uh, students that this would be the best form of government. And so ultimately, they're just trying to persuade the government
to expand the
to
death penalty to blasphemers.
kill blasphemers, and specifically Christians. Their heads should be cut off. Now, would you be fine with that?
Let me see. Well, I wouldn't be, as far
What I
as
mean
it
is,
seems like, doesn't that meet
do
the,
you think?
if, okay, so what would the response be to that?
I'm
I
asking
still,
you where the
yeah,
boundaries are
I'm
on
actually
this.
thinking, I still, even if that was the terrible, heinous speech, I could see protesting, but I can't see setting the tree on fire outside the building and doing the whole air horn thing and throwing rocks at them. I still
I
can't. I can't see
okay.
myself doing that.
I just wanted to take you to the limit, to the edges of where you're at.
so
But
So
it
so
seems like even letting
because
them
they
speak, though,
because they
letting
say
them
that
speak, though, would
they
expose their. I mean, if you expose that and say, this is what this group stands for, I guess you would hope that even through exposure, you could say, this is a really terrible group. Look at what they advocate for. Nobody should support
okay,
this group. Like, that would be illuminating,
that would be
right?
the response. So you are then I would say, true to your beliefs then, because you're saying even in the most egregious situation, you would still believe in the freedom of speech. And when I say the most egregious, this is a person who's actually advocating that your head be cut off. And you're saying that it should be you can protest, you can uh, do different things. Of course, everyone has the freedom to protest, but you wouldn't prevent them from speaking, and you wouldn't light trees on fire, throw rocks at them, and so forth. Because their argument on the other side is that you, Dana, I'm not sure why you in particular, but it sure seems like people are coming at you, and me and Braun are basically killing people. Our words are killing people, and so the Antifa people are saying, and maybe not us specifically, but it sure seems like it's me.
Or someone you would think,
they're
someone you would
saying,
listen to, right?
sure, people, it's just they're doing it with everybody at this point, it seems. But anyhow, they're saying that those people's words cause violence, so we can use violence, meet violence with violence. Their words cause, their ideas cause violence, so we can use violence in response. That's the kind of thought process. I've seen it on more than one occasion. That's the thought process. And you're saying that even if their words are advocating for violence, that you believe in the freedom of speech and that everyone should be able to express their ideas, period.
I mean, yeah, I guess I was even imagining like, oh, it would be really good, like if you had a secure environment where, these people who are advocating for Christians to get their heads cut off wouldn't actually be able to do it right there in that setting. Like if it was secure, right? If they were
Well, you don't.
only
That's why I asked
speaking,
your
if they were
first
only
question.
speaking, right?
Yeah, I asked you
Like
your
I would
first
even think,
question is
oh, it'd
you don't
be
tolerate violence. You don't tolerate
no.
physical violence. You don't tolerate physical. You don't tolerate crime. You're speaking specifically in the context of speech. So this is only the speech. This is a group that is advocating for the overtaking, let's say, of uh, the government and getting into positions of power so that we can enact laws that take Christians and cut their heads off, which is what they were doing in another country. So it's not an unreasonable, extreme example. And you would say that everyone should have the right to speak.
Well, I mean, it'd be terrible, but I could even see someone saying, hey, if it's just at the level of speech, we should have someone debate that person because it seems like you could show how how twisted and wrong their religious views are just by even
Well,
appealing to
I'll give you a
human
stamp of
human
consistency then.
sentiment.
I'm
A
going to
what?
argue, I'm going to argue that Dana seems to be consistent. I just took her through the ringer there, and she seemed to pass right on through.
Yeah.
With moments and of thought and pausing and thinking. I appreciate. I happen to like you, Dana.
Yeah, no, that's one issue of the conversation. I think the bigger, broader issue is the real possibility that people that do advocate for those things have the ability to get into power and actually enact those things. So when you can misgender somebody and go to jail, really doesn't seem that far off.
Well, currently, I don't think you can go to jail here, right? I think you could just be ostracized and lose your job. But in Canada, that's where, they started having some legislation where I think the penalty was a fine. But then I heard someone say, well, what if you don't pay the fine? What happens next?
Yeah.
Probably jail would be next.
I'm almost certain the video I'd watched that they mentioned somewhere in the United States. I'll have to revisit it. But I mean, regardless though of whether that's an actual law now, obviously that's a real possibility because we see it happen to people even if it's not a law, right? Media figures, teachers, your local baker can get into issues, right? It can be sent to court, all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah.
doesn't seem, yeah, and again, it seems just from observation, doesn't seem like you're too concerned about that.
I'm not
Seems
sure
like
what you're observing. Like, what are you
well,
observing?
well, I think there seems to be like almost, from my perspective, a dismissal that actually is a true concern, like here in the United States right now. Like it's not problematic to you, it feels like, but I could be wrong.
No, I mean, I think it's like I said before, I think that'd be the issue that Christians and Christian churches are going to get harsh treatment due to those types of things. I think it's very serious. Now, there are a lot of times though where I stop and I compare what's happening to um, Christians in Muslim dominated nations and the massive just bloodshed and terrible treatment. And, some of them, I think in Pakistan, they can only get certain types of jobs and they're incredibly menial jobs. They're basically forced to live in poverty. Um, the Christians are. And I compare what we're dealing with here, where basically, I mean, there are people who have suffered, but not at all to the same extent that's allowed legally in other countries. So I think, oh, we have it very cushy here. But no, like down the line, unless there's a big culture shift, I don't see things getting better. And I think it's serious. And my friend, when we talk about, I have a friend who's Catholic. We talk about these issues a lot, and I guess she basically has chosen to tell her children to prepare themselves to be martyrs. That's kind of what she thinks the culture is going towards. So I think martyrs in different ways, maybe just financially or whatever. But I think some people are taking it serious. I think I take it serious, although maybe that doesn't come across
Um,
as much as what's in my head or what I talk about personally with others.
yeah, that might be the case. Do you do you see do you see a need? I mean, you mentioned debating, right? And debating somebody that has those ideas, and being able to talk those through. As much as that, as much as I agree, right, that would be a good solution, somebody to be able to talk through it. Do you see the problem with trying to even have a debate with somebody that thinks like that?
Well, what do you do? Like, right, you try, even though it might not make a difference at all, but you still try. Like, we've seen people change, although most people don't, right? Like, with a lot of things, it seems like most people fail at a lot of things, but you still try and hope.
Yeah. So, so for instance, I mean, people that, would support Alexandra, and let's just say that kind of mindset, being able to have a conversation, you can try to have a conversation, but, it doesn't really go anywhere. And so you try it, and I think at the end of the day, it sounds like that's all you can really do. There's nothing else we can do about it, right? I mean, that's kind of at the end of the day, it is what it is, kind of thing.
Um, well, what would you advocate besides trying to change people's minds, or even further, like change people's, or hopefully you'd hope that people would change maybe their fundamental beliefs about existence and the purpose of life and where to get their morals from. Like, wouldn't that be like, that's the most powerful fundamental change that changes everything often. Like, a lot of things change after you change those fundamental, after someone changes their fundamental beliefs. And that seems like the most powerful thing you could hope for. And then maybe if those fundamental beliefs change, then maybe the style of government, whether we're a little more socialist or not, wouldn't really be that big of a deal, because you'd hope that somebody who has more fundamental moral beliefs about like the value of all people and what to do with your enemies, how to treat your enemies, um, you would think that that person would be a lot easier to live with versus someone who thinks it's okay to hate people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I guess, I guess in a way, you know, if you're the baker that doesn't want to bake a cake for religious purposes, whatever the situation might be, or you refuse to say like, you're a woman and I think you're a man, and then there's consequences to that. That, I mean, would you say that, people that hold to those ideas are the enemies of the things that you believe?
Wait, the baker?
No, the people that, are, wanting to, persecute the baker, or, put the baker in jail or put him out of business. Would you say that those are, the enemies of the things that you believe? People that essentially support that.
Um, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I could also see how some of those people are coming at it through different reasons, and maybe they're not coming at it because of a hatred of the Christian baker, right? Like, I think they really do believe they're protecting victims.
Right.
So I can understand that. So maybe I wouldn't, gosh, who would I call my enemy? Who have I called my enemy lately?
Your husband.
But yeah, yeah, no, but I mean, yeah, sure. Or like,
I mean, your partner.
my partner. Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I guess I have, yeah. So sure, like they're in the realm of enemies. I mean, they're definitely making life really hard for the baker, right? Um, gosh, that's really, it's really interesting to think about. Um,
I think your enemy is a
so
lot of the truly BAD people.
BAD. Yeah, so here's one thing I thought, Ron, because I'm trying to think, like,
And there's a lot of scary people out there.
yeah, so we're talking about like I've been praying with people about forgiving and being at peace with stuff. And um so one person who maybe he's not my enemy, but I know he's someone who would be considered an enemy. He killed a little boy who was part of a church we were part of. He was just convicted last week. He had done drive-by shootings to this home where the little boy was at with some family. A very devastating act. When I thought of enemy to forgive or deal with, that's a person I've considered an enemy.
And that's keeping it real, Ron.
And I'm not even, I wasn't super close with the boy. It was still terrible. But when I think about the people who are having to deal with the aftermath of what that man did,
I was a
yes,
Sunday school teacher.
Yeah, this
and we went to his
guy.
birthday parties. And
Yeah,
we
it's
went to church
terrible.
together. I
Like,
don't know what you mean by not super close. You mean like because we didn't
well,
have him over as a friend to
not
play with
as
our
close
children?
as not as close as the other,
Certainly not as close as some others.
Yeah,
I just want
so
to point out that he was a pretty close. He was closer than most children are.
yeah, but I know for the people who are really suffering, this boy was like, he was their son. This was their very, they were like an aunt and uncle to him. So that's like an enemy. That man who killed him is like an enemy. That's the number. When I've thought of enemy in the last couple months, that's probably the only person who's really come to mind, and how to deal with that man and what he did.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I think at the end of the day, the political kind of stuff, I think for the most part, most people don't seem too concerned about it. I mean, they think, yeah, it's somewhat problematic, but not changing their life in any way, not
Well, you know
changing in
what?
how.
Sorry, go on.
Oh no, that's it. I just from observation doesn't seem to be too much concern about the stuff you hear in the news.
Well,
It's,
yeah. So what might be interesting is, again, the world of Facebook, right? And some people are more into posting than others. But I am friends with a lot of like homeschooling people who go to like Calvary chapels or what are considered more conservative churches. And some of them are posting quite a bit things from Jihad Watch about some of the things that um, Muslims are doing and advocating for in Europe and in the United States. And people post about some of the political things, again, with the baker and different things like that, and some of the transgender issues and how that does impact um, Christian teachers. And so I'm seeing people concerned about it. Not everybody uses Facebook, I think, to express all their political views, because I'll notice that people who don't post like anything, when I talk to them in private, they're aware of these things and they've expressed concern, but they're not maybe one to use Facebook to discuss it. So maybe because I'm also part of some of those circles, I do see people who care, but it might not translate into online discussion.
yeah, yeah. Or I mean, or even even not even online discussion, but think about, are you out necessarily talking to people about, hey, like there's, crazy stuff going on in the world, and, people that advocate these things and see it more and more. Doesn't seem to necessarily change the way people are living. Doesn't, people aren't, I wouldn't say like, so I'm sure you're not going out and going, hey, by the way, people that associate with this certain party, like let's say Alexandra, or people that, are on that platform, on the more progressive platform. Um, doesn't seem like there's a big push to say, hey, people in power can do these kinds of things. They can, change laws, and they can make laws that make it illegal for you to misgender somebody. Um, so for instance, like the discussions that we do have and the few people that we do interact with, um, do you ever express concern in those conversations? The little ones that you do have.
Well, in one of my last discussions about like the transgender issues, the person chose to end the discussion with me. So I might be losing whatever little progressive audience I had. I guess I might need to reach out to others more, find some new people to talk with. And in regular life though, maybe, I mean, I'm just thinking of the people who I tend to meet. I don't meet in person a lot of really really passionate progressives. And maybe I just need to get out more and meet more people. A lot of times I'm at home with my children, right? There was one who we did know, and I tried to keep up. I kind of do. She hasn't unfriended me. We keep up sometimes online, and we'll talk about things back and forth. I haven't talked with her lately online, but what would be good is to talk. I could see doing that, like talking about, like, what do you mean? Like the concern for the agenda you're pushing is going to do to me what you don't want. You don't want the Christians to do this to other people, right? You don't want the Christians to overtake the government and then make someone's life really hard. But don't you see how your agenda does that to others? Like you're talking about having that kind of conversation with them?
No, I would go more along the lines of like, so we've had a couple guests on the show, right? And from observation, like we'll call him Ned, our discussion with Ned. He was kind of advocating and supporting a lot of the, seemed like even it was just a piece of the pie, but he was supporting a lot of the thoughts and same ideas that these people that we do find problematic support. So he would kind of align with those kind of people. It seems like because they kind of support a lot of the same things, right? So if you go back to that discussion that we were having, he kind of advocates for a lot of the same things that the people that you're saying are problematic support. Well, he supports a lot of those same things too. So without being super radical, and he was very eloquent and spoke very nicely. He wasn't overbearing, but he supports a lot of that stuff. Do you ever express concern to him, or would you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we haven't had a lot of contact lately. Sometimes I'll text a bit. I think the last time I did express concern, though, and maybe you saw this video. I don't know. I guess it's a popular video because it's been shared. I've seen it shared a couple times. But where it's like basically showing how, like, the bigot of yesteryear was the bigot who'd say, yeah, I'm cool with gay people, but I don't want my son to be gay or something like that. That's not okay. And then today's bigot would say something like, now I can't remember the video, but basically saying something like, oh yeah, transgender people are fine, but I wouldn't want to date one or something like that. And kind of showing that both are bigots. And it used this word bigot a lot. And my response to Ned after him sharing the video was basically like, can't you see? I think I said something like, basically, can't you see how using this type of language and calling someone a bigot is not helpful and it's not necessary and it's and I said it's like it's just not necessary. Like, why can't we talk about differences of opinion without going to those names? And I said, you don't believe. So I brought up. I said, a lot of times I believe that I'm this child of God who's been born again or whatever, and I'm communing with God. and you don't believe my reality, right? Because you're an atheist, but I don't call you a faith-phobic bigot, you know? Like,
Yeah.
why can't I don't want to call you, or should I call you a faith-phobic bigot? And it actually made him think, I guess. We never revisited it, but he had to think about, maybe I am a bigot. And I was like, no, I don't want you to think you're a bigot. What I want is that we can have a conversation without the need to, I mean, let's not call people names. And it'd be good to revisit that. Maybe it'll be a future show. But I feel like, as far as expressing concern, to me, my concern is there, like, you're in your advocacy, you're advocating for really, like, kind of like dehumanizing names. And it's just not, it's not helpful. I want to talk, but I don't feel like I should call you slurs. So how about don't call me slurs? Is that the concern
Yeah.
you're thinking? Like, so that's one area of concern. I'm open to expressing concern.
Yeah.
But,
No,
I'm not always chatting online.
yeah, no, and again, I think it's more of the big idea of, extending beyond names and going into, consequences, like serious consequences of misgendering somebody. And, essentially being, the mindset that, misgendering somebody is an actual issue. Where I would feel like it's not really an issue. You're making it an issue. You're making it problematic, but at the end of the day, it's not an issue, but it's quickly becoming something that's an issue. I mean,
yeah.
If you there's certain people, again, without naming names, but there's plenty of people and have had pull up many conversations and on Facebook. I just use that as an example, just because it's clearly you can see it. But I mean, you can have that conversation, and again, there seems to be, with some of these people, a support of that kind of stuff, a support of, it is problematic that you misgender somebody. I feel like I feel like that, if there were concerns from people, it'd be a little bit more outspoken about it. They'd be a little more straightforward with the fact that, that's, putting somebody in jail, right, because they don't recognize what you recognize, is kind of an issue. But again, that seems to be something that is accepted, but and again, we'll use our guest as an example. It's it's not just that one issue. There's the overall arching kind of acceptance of all those same things.
Yeah.
That all point to the kind. So it's like this. If you're sitting at the ballot box and you're having the discussion and you're labeling your candidates, right? And we know somebody that's very militant when it comes to voting, and says, if you vote for Trump, you're hateful and blah blah blah. But if you vote for this other guy, you're not. But a vote for that other guy is a vote for all these other things that we're talking about. And it seems like there's very little concern when it comes to that stuff, just widely little concern.
Yeah. And well, you know what? That I was just thinking, like, I actually, in my social circles, I probably deal with a lot of Christians, like a lot of, maybe not, seeing the same thing on everything, but if I were to ask them, or I have talked with them, what do you think about these issues? They are concerned. They do see problems, and some of them are dealing with their children on college campuses, you know, dealing with stuff, right? Dealing with these issues. But it would be interesting to talk more with people who are often, again, so to clarify, I'm dealing with often homeschoolers too, who have pulled out of the secular culture in large part, in schooling. That's a big step, you know. Our homeschooling groups are not subject to PC culture or things like that. They're not. A teacher in our school isn't going to get fired, or for the classes that we do together, no one's going to get fired for calling someone by their biological pronouns. But it would be interesting to talk more with people who are more immersed in secular settings, or some of the Christians I know who have been who who have an alignment with the Democratic Party because of their desire to see needy people cared for. And it would be good to say, like, kind of like to them, because, like, yeah, what is your take on the religious freedom aspect, or even just freedom to dissent in general? Um, that would be good. I feel like what I've done with my life is I've pulled away from a lot of the, like, I'm not entangled with having to navigate, some type of system that's still trying to uphold whatever. Again, like, say, the PC stuff. I just don't participate in those things.
Do you feel like though that system, right, that you kind of pulled away from and got out of, do you feel like that system is aggressively trying to encroach in where you are now? Like, it seems to me, so you do homeschooling and you talk to a lot of these homeschooling mothers. I'm assuming it sounds like, well, not assuming, it sounds like you do different forums and even getting together. It seems to me, if I'm not mistaken, that, this kind of the system that you're talking about seems to be very aggressively trying to get ground into where you are right now. As far as homeschooling, there seems to be like a demonization of homeschoolers. And, I would think, you probably will be homeschooling for many years to come. Even if, your last child's your last child that you have, but if you continue to have more, it seems to me that would be somewhat of a concern for you. And I'm assuming you probably have those discussions with people. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and now within the last year, I think it was Richard Pan. He's a state senator. So if you want to think of, one issue of a political thing that I actually took time to call, and the homeschoolers really turned out big time. Or maybe it was him and, I don't know, some other lady, but they put forth bills that would severely regulate homeschooling in California. In my poor memory, I can't even forget what it was. But basically, the homeschoolers, like hundreds of them, went to the state capitol to voice their opposition. They were just like lining up through all the halls for the public comments time. People called like crazy and emailed to get them to pull, I think it was 2 bills. And again, I can't even remember what they entailed, but it was going to really severely either put regulations on who could teach or mandate certain things. But any type of, so that'll come up a lot with California's legislature. They'll try to put things that will really curtail homeschooling. And the homeschoolers do turn out for that. So a lot of people are paying attention because, I think there's a lot of very freedom-minded people who choose to homeschool. So that's something, that's probably one of my key things I care about, because I would just like the freedom. I'm not even interested too much at this point to regulate what's happening in the public school as far as anything, but I want the freedom to not be part of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you, even in the public school though, do you feel like, I mean, obviously you're concerned about social issues, right? Healthcare. I'm assuming education would kind of fall into that as well. right? I mean, do you see a need to have some balance even in secular schools? I mean, because a lot of, as much as it's like anything else, I mean, I always hear the arguments about, you know, very wealthy people being able to make rules for the public, and yet they can send their kids to public school. I mean, do you feel
Private
like,
school.
or yeah, private school, they can send their kids to private school, but everybody else has to deal with these things? Do you feel like, you know, though you've been given an opportunity, you know, to homeschool your kids, which is awesome, a lot of people out there don't have that opportunity, and yet, you know, probably need, you know, somewhat of a voice to say, hey, wait a second, you know, there has to be some kind of like checks and balances here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't thought too much, but it is very scary to see how there aren't that many checks and balances. I choose to follow my husband's teacher union group, and they are lockstep, like Democrat all the way, and promoting, I always say with the transgender things, promoting books, like as if to assume that nobody would think differently who's part of the teacher union. And Sure, so I think it would be good to have a balance. I guess I'm kind of busy right now. But yeah, I mean, I wonder why, and maybe I'm just not in that circle too much, right? I'm not participating in public school, but to me, it seems like some parents should be talking about those types of things, right? I know a friend of mine had mentioned that she didn't like how her son's social studies textbook basically really demonized Christians and really, like, it was very antagonistic. And she thought that was a targeted thing on Christians. She's a Christian, but I don't know if it went any further from just not liking it, not liking that was in the book. Whereas it seems like with say, if it was someone who felt targeted due to like race or LGBT things, maybe they'd make more of an outcry to the school board, to the teachers, like, why are you using this book? It's targeting my faith or targeting my life. Yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot of that protest.
Yeah.
But I'm also not really in that setting.
No, that's interesting. Interesting stuff. It's a fascinating topic.
I think that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm feeling like Jeff probably pulled up some really good data and wants to share it with us.
Oh,
probably.
I found the problem. Remember how you guys thought that Mrs. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was threatening Trump Jr. by saying, "Please keep it coming, Jr. It's definitely a very, very large brain idea to troll a member of the body that will have subpoena power in a month."
Yeah.
Somebody commented, "Only a poorly educated right-winger with a tenuous grasp of language would ever perceive this as some sort of threat. Such, however, is the state of conservatism today, a movement which attracts the uninformed and promotes obtuseness as a virtue." See?
So it's just saying you're stupid for thinking that's a threat?
Yeah.
I get case closed. Boom.
But what I find interesting is, you want to get spiritual for a second here? Is on this dailymail.com article, it shows that it shows the original response, which was just a picture. It's just a picture of her with the caption, "Why are you so afraid of a socialist economy?" And then it shows Trump saying, "Because Americans want to walk their dogs, not eat them."
Oh, it's so sad.
And that's coming from my understanding. That's coming from is it Venezuela where they're eating their. There's a story that they're eating their animals because they're starving.
Well, a lot of places, I guess in the Soviet Union, I think it was Soviet Union, there's a photo of these meat sellers who were selling human meat at one time during this, when things were getting really bad. Because that was the meat that they had to sell, like dead people.
Oh,
Yeah. So what do you think about that comment in response to
the subpoena comment in response to the kind of quip?
Yeah,
well, he's saying something. He's saying he's being derogatory about socialism in a
I think it's
witty
outrageous.
way.
That's my response. That he's insulting her, and she responds that I have subpoena power.
Yeah,
it's terrifying. Actually, I think it is terrifying.
It seems like is it part of the package? Is that part of the package?
It's terrifying. Now, to be fair, she responded for the GOP crying that this is a quote threat end quote. I don't have power to subpoena anybody. Congress as a body, GOP included, has the power. No individual member can issue a subpoena unless they are a chair, parenthesis, which as a freshman I can assure you I will not be, parenthesis, also must be under purview. So that's called walking it back, I guess.
Yes.
But the fact that she even said that scares me, like that she's trying to frame it. It's all scary to me. So Candace Owens responded, I just want to be clear that a member-elect of Congress just threatened a private citizen with subpoena power, a subpoena over a meme. And that's exactly the thought. That's why she's probably popular, is because she captures the exact thought, right? I just want to be clear, did a member-elect of Congress just threaten a private citizen with a subpoena over a meme? And then she said, there's no way in hell this can be legal.
Yeah.
It does all unfortunately kind of have a connection. This sort of, I hate to say Jim Jones and Antifa and that little comment there. Maybe somebody can connect the dots with conservatism too, and the conservatism is all these things. Maybe that's true too. So maybe we should lay off of the extreme weirdos and focus on the what is it? The value of the argument, maybe.
So, like the extreme weirdos, would you say all these people on college campuses are extreme weirdos?
So Antifa,
seems to
Jim
be a
Jones,
lot of them though, Jeff.
And I just said Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. No matter what she says, threatening to subpoena somebody because they put a silly meme. And people can say it's not a threat, and they're right that it's not like a threat, but come on, it's obvious. That's what she's saying. Please keep it coming, Junior. It's definitely very smart to troll a member of body that will have subpoena power. What other meaning can that mean other than you're an idiot for trolling me because I have power?
Yeah.
So she's an extreme. So she's extreme. And Jim Jones is extreme, and Antifa is extreme. So maybe we should avoid connecting all those dots and look for the I don't know the actual value of the argument. Maybe there's a good argument if you avoid these extremes.
Yeah. Other than the extremes that you're referring to seem to be more widespread than just those few individuals. We just talked about the widespread problem with even homeschooling and the aggressive.
You're right. I don't know what to do. Yeah, it gets in everywhere. It's ugly.
Yeah, well, but on one hand, though, homeschooling wasn't always a right. I mean, people, I think it was in the 80s. That's when states began to change and legally grant that right. Like parents did it underground before. They just didn't send their kids to school. So it's kind of like I love it. I'm really glad we have it, but it hasn't always been the norm.
I forgot to share with you something that's a little off topic, but I told you where it gets interesting. In this article, it quotes that Candace Owen quote. Remember, I just read to you. I just want to be clear that a member elected Congress just threatened a private citizen with a subpoena over a meme. There's no way in hell this can be legal. So that one is shown in there as a response in this article. And I just want to note, I think this is kind of interesting. That response had 17,284 retweets and 46,000 likes. Now keep that in mind, okay? And then if I scroll down, their counter, it says here, conservative tweeters were quick to accuse, right? And it gives examples of tweets. And it says others supported her by denying that her tweet was tantamount to a threat. Remember the one I read you about only a poorly educated right winger?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How many retweets and likes do you think that one got?
A guy billion.
10 likes and 5 comments. Now the question becomes, why did the news media choose to put Candace Owens' comment next to this other comment that, Candace Owens is actually somebody in the media who has, and tons of people retweeted, so clearly people cared about this, and then they put this nobody with no interest whatsoever, and they this only a poorly educated right winger, and they put that as juxtaposed as though that has the same weight. I find that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So I guess maybe one conclusion from this show is, Ron, we're concerned too about many of the things we see in the culture.
You are, yeah. Yeah. Yes. As you've stated. And I don't know. Hopefully, one of these days we can get one of these guys on here that believes some of this stuff, and we can talk it through.
Yeah, well, we gotta hustle. I have so much to do. But yeah, I think we could get a living, breathing person to discuss some of these things. I imagine what we'll find though is they probably don't go far, right? Go as far as what some of the louder people in the culture are advocating for.
You got to find one of them.
A loudmouth who's extreme.
Yes. All right. That's amazing.
Any last thoughts, Ron? Like Ron, what do you want to see in Jeff and Dana? I feel like you want us to be more something.
No. I think when I look at the issues, right, I see people that are passionate about it. So I see on the other side of the issues, I see people a lot more passionate about this stuff. So I see people, I'm gonna say not extreme, but just because of my my own personal interaction. So if you take the speakers on the college campus, right, and you take the reactions to those events, I've had very similar experiences on a small level or a small scale, but very similar experiences. And so it seems to me that those people are much more willing to be vocal, push back on those ideas aggressively, and conservative-minded people are more. I'm gonna say they have a more docile kind of nature, where it's like, yeah, we want to have the discussion, but we're not going to really stir things up. People believe what they believe, and maybe that's why they make so much headway. That's why they change laws. That's why homeschooling you know does face those threats, because people that advocate for more conservative ideas and freedoms, they seem to be much more relaxed when it comes to their ideas. They don't seem to be really wanting to force the issue, and especially in conversations. I mean, is if you we'll use Facebook because it's such a observable, media center, but you take Facebook and, again, I think people on the more progressive side are much more vocal, much more loud, when it comes to that thing. And I don't mean more willing to have the conversation, but they're the ones out there pushing the ideas. They're the ones out there posting the stuff. They're the ones out there, where the conservatives seem to kind of shy away from those things. And so it makes sense why progressives get things done.
Dana, I think the deep state's messing with your phone.
No. The deep state is not messing with my phone.
No, you're crunchy. You're extra crunchy. All right. Well, it's been really, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just remember, all of you who got to the very last lines of this show, djronshow@gmail.com. Send those questions. Yes, and comments and praises. And of course, this is what, every Tuesday around 8:30. Oh wow! Anything else, my fellow human being?
No, that was perfect.
Adios.
Where's our rocket, Jeff?